Have you contacted any of the others?
I have contacted some of the others, and it's completely up to them. I'm just leading. I'm leading.
I spent 20 years in the military, Korea, Vietnam, and I'm not as afraid, I wasn't as afraid for my country then as I am now. We are subtly, step by step, getting rid of every single freedom we've ever enjoyed. I don't think we understand, any of us, how far it has gone. Scares me to death. And that's why I've been reading up a little bit on you. You seem to be a fighter, and that's what I'm looking for.
Anyone who knows me knows that I am.
Okay.
Anyone who knows me knows that I am. But you're absolutely right. You see, when I grew up with my fathers telling me these stories, I had a really, really great appreciation for what we have here. I've seen a country that has tried to distribute wealth, that really did, by law, tried to distribute wealth. I've seen a country that has taken businesses and thrown it out, made it impossible for them to stay and produce. I've seen a country that created class warfare that was so bad. It started off innocent enough, kind of like today, right? Where we're pinning up the rich against the poor. I've seen that, where it starts today and they ended up killing each other in the streets. That paradise is called Haiti. You want to see poor? Go to Haiti. You have to understand, I have a big appreciation. I've heard stories, I've been to Haiti. I know what that looks like. We cannot go down that road. If anybody thinks that we're not capable of getting there, please, I implore you, think again.
But you know, your commitment is going to have to be beyond. This is a friendly environment that you're in now. When you
Yes.
go to Washington,
They're going to tear me apart.
That's not a friendly environment. Karen Shepherd went in with Bill Clinton and saying that she would not increase taxes. And the first major vote that she made was to increase taxes. And she lasted 2 years. And then she said, when she lost the next election, she said the only thing worse than losing would be winning, because it's so tough back there. You gotta be tough as nails when you go there, because they're gonna eat you alive if you can. I'm serious. I mean, that's just not, it's a whole different environment, and you gotta be tough to go there.
Someone has to do it.
That's right.
Someone has to do it. And I'm standing up. And here's the thing. I cannot do it on my own. I cannot do it on my own. I need your help. So yes, I know I'm going to be a target. Remember, I'm not supposed to exist. And they're going to make it very difficult. I will be called every name in the book. You name it. By the left. Bring it. I say bring it. Game on.
What's your economic background, and what do you know about the mainstream arguments for deficit spending being a solution for a stagnated economy?
Okay, so first off, I would say deficit spending being a solution, how has that worked for us? It hasn't worked for us. We spend over $4 billion a day that we don't have deficit spending. What's my economic background? It's being able to balance a city's budget, being able to do that, being able to stand up in front of people and say, this is what we have. You have to understand, I was sitting in front of police officers that were telling me, you know, these are the things we need, and I'm going into the nitty-gritty of things, saying, what do you need binoculars for? I want to know how that's going to work and how that's going to be a safety solution for
but the federal government is unique. I mean, because they can print money. So I mean, it's a different scenario, and mainstream economics says that's on purpose, and the federal government has to be able to do that to help us when we're in down times and when we're in economic downturns, and to be able to account for wars. So I mean,
yeah.
How do you know where that stems from?
Well, if you think about it, just look at Greece. If Greece were able to print money right now, it's a slow decline. That's where we are. It's a slow decline. It's continuing to happen. The fact that we're printing money, again, we're covering our rear ends. Our monetary policies are wrong. We need to get back to Austrian. economics.
Can I answer his question?
Oh, did I not do a good job answering the question?
No, I,
Or are you adding, you're adding on to it for me?
I took some economics back in college back in the day, and I had a professor who was very well known. He was on KSL all the time, and he was like, "Oh yeah, government spending, that's what they have to do to stimulate the economy." Bull crap.
Yeah.
Basically, it's John Maynard Keynes from the 20s and 30s.
I know that, I was trying to see.
Yeah.
Were you? Okay. If you understand it, you probably
We have to get
understand.
back, again,
Just doesn't
like I said,
work.
we've got to get back to Austrian economics.
We've never been on that.
Well, we've got, well, I'm saying, we've got to, as a society, we all should be Austrians. I mean, if you think about it, our monetary policy is way off. It does not work. Deficit spending has not worked for us.
I have a question about Obamacare.
Okay.
And been hearing some grumblings, or I'm not hearing any talk about changing the way that the insurance companies can cross state lines. And I don't really understand about that. Do you have a grip on that?
Well, what they're saying is we should be able to allow insurance companies to cross state lines and compete. So
Yes.
it's the art of competition again. But Obamacare, again, we can't even have a conversation, because the question shouldn't be what should be implemented and what shouldn't be implemented. The question should be whether federal government should be involved in doing
Who
that. to begin
regulates
with.
the insurance? The federal government?
Yeah, federal
So-
government does.
Okay, so why aren't we hearing somebody say that's how we really need to make a reform, is to stop regulating that so we can compete?
Which is what we're saying. That's what we're saying. We're saying allow states to compete. It's the same thing with education. Allow states to be able to do that. Allow states to at least, and then you could privatize if you want to. You can go ahead, I mean, these are the things that we're moving toward, but I'm looking at federal government and what federal government's involved in, and I'm trying to remove those regulations so that states will have a lot more room to be able to do something. When we look at Melissa and I can only deregulate so much. We can only deregulate so much because then we hit a wall, we hit state wall of regulations, right? And then the state can only do so much, which is why our jobs, at one point, I believe if we continue to go down this road, there is no need for us to ever have local government, because it's all being implemented from the top down. So what I'm trying to say is fix the root of the problem, which is get federal government out of it. There's no constitutional, it's not in the Constitution at all. There's nothing that says Congress is supposed to find a way to have health care give health care to the American public.
Okay, but how come during a Republican administration, when George Bush had the House and the Senate as Republicans, how come they didn't deregulate?
Because you're under the assumption that all Republicans are doing the right thing. I think you're under the assumption that we've got problems within our party also.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got,
But I just don't get why, if the federal government can vote it and say that every state can open up their state lines for insurance, I mean, to me, that seems like
again, and you're
it's just
talking
hard for
about,
me to
you're right,
understand.
it's hard to understand, and it's hard for me to understand how a president put together, a Republican president, put together the No Child Left Behind.
Right.
This is the same, these are the subjects we're talking about here. Go ahead.
You're quite right when you ask about George Bush as a supposed Republican. However, we have the assumption that there's two parties basically in this country. Well, at the very least, there's three. There's the Republicans, there's the Democrats, and there's the progressives who hide themselves in both. Since they basically totally taken over the Democrat Party, you may have people who have progressive ideas, such as George Bush and others currently running, but we must not make the error that just
Who are you
because
talking about,
somebody...
Victor? Whosoever are you talking about?
Anyone who wants to know can read my books. However, let me get back to the main point. Just because someone has the audacity to put an R after their name, we as the voting public do not have to be deceived that they are truly Republicans. If we have what we know are core Republican values, and someone is supposedly running for a Republican nomination, but they have nothing in common with Republican core values, then one of two things. We either have to reject them on a national level, or given the fact that the progressives have dominated most of our national politics, we have to make sure that we elect a team of people from Utah, not any given random individuals, but we have a team that can work together to make a firewall in Utah against what is a progressive force nationally.
Are you running for Congress as well?
I'm a legislator. I'm just trying to organize legislator. Which I was
He's
in
a
this area.
legislator. But you're absolutely right. You're assuming that we've got Republicans that are doing the right things. We've got problems within the party and outside of the party. We've got to be able to get, one of the things that Victor said is right. You can elect somebody based on specific issues, or you can elect somebody based on principles, specific principles.
But you didn't hear anybody bringing up the fact, let's, instead of having Obamacare, let's open up state lines. I haven't heard that one time. I mean, why doesn't somebody bring that up as an opposition to it? You know, I just...
It's out there.
Can I answer that? They've brought it up plenty of times. The media does not cover that.
It's out there, and again, you do. It's there. When I say we don't have to reinvent the wheel, people have come up with really good solutions, and they're not paying attention. Because what did I say? The principle again. It doesn't matter. Do you think that we're going to go to Washington and we're going to change these politicians' minds that are somehow getting a kickback? How do you change? Remember, we talked about this earlier. How do we change? We have got to send a different messenger. We have got to be able to get our fellow Americans to understand that these policies are hurting them. We have got to send somebody to Washington that's going to look across the table to all of the people like Maxine Waters, the Sheila E. Jacksons, and the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, and say, your representatives have kept themselves in power and have kept you completely where you are. Their situations haven't changed.